بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیکم. میں ہوں آپ کا میزبان شجاع قریشی، اور آج کے اس خصوصی پروگرام میں ہم آپ کو اس عالمی کانفرنس کے کچھ اہم حصے دکھائیں گے جو جنگ میڈیا گروپ اور جیو ٹی وی نیٹ ورکس نے بائیکو اور منسٹری آف انرجی پیٹرولیم ڈویژن کے تعاون سے منعقد کی. اس عالمی کانفرنس میں خاص طور پر عالمی اور مقامی ماہرین نے پاکستان کے تیل اور گیس کے شعبوں کے فروغ کے لیے اپنے تجربات کی بنیاد پر اہم مشورے دیے اور ان شعبوں میں سرمایہ کاری کے مواقع کو بھی اجاگر کیا. اس کے علاوہ اس کانفرنس میں ترکمانستان، افغانستان، پاکستان انڈیا گیس پائپ لائن کے منصوبے کی پیش رفت سے بھی آگاہ کیا گیا. پروگرام کے آغاز میں آپ کو وفاقی وزیر برائے پیٹرولیم غلام سرور خان کی تقریر کے کچھ اہم نکات دکھاتے ہیں.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, energy is an essential driver of the country's economy. Pakistan, like many other developing countries, is energy deficient. The mission of this government is to promote investment in energy sector to ensure the availability and security of sustainable supply of oil and gas for economic development and strategic requirements of the country. Pakistan imports nearly 80% of energy requirements from international market. On the one hand, we are struggling to keep up with an increasing energy import bill which has adversely affected our trade deficit. While on the other hand, it is very difficult for the government to pass on the full impact of the rising international oil prices to the people. We have a huge challenge to arrange the best and cost-efficient fuel mix to meet our annual needs, which is growing at over 8% per annum. In the oil sector, Pakistan today does not have a deep conversion refinery. 5 local refineries, which are basically hydro-skimming, produce only 12 million tons per annum of petroleum products against the current demand of over 25 million tons per annum. Pakistan needs to be self-sufficient in refined oil products. The government has decided to completely phase out the use of furnace oil in the thermal power plants. The existing oil refineries in Pakistan will have to reconfigure themselves to reduce the production of furnace oil. The upcoming mega refineries with cooperation of brotherly Saudi Arabia and UAE and expansion in other refineries and retail chains will help in meeting the local demand and also exporting to its regional markets. Ladies and gentlemen, we are working towards better oil and gas exploration in Pakistan, and new blocks will be offered very soon for exploration. Pakistan has a total sedimentary area of 8.27,000 square kilometers. Area under exploration is 3.61,000 square kilometer. Around 11,000 exploratory wells have drilled in Pakistan so far. Despite low density of wells, Pakistan oil and gas discovery's success is very impressive. Indigenous natural gas production is 4,000 mmcfd. Crude oil production is over 95 BOPD, which meets only 15% of total demand. Pakistan has the best gas infrastructure in the region, with the transmission and distribution length across the country about 185,000 kilometers length, serving over 8 million gas consumers. Pakistan has a large offshore basin which largely remains underexplored. The Indus offshore is the second largest submarine force system in the world. It is heartening that presently an offshore well is in ultra-deep waters near Karachi is being spudded in joint venture for E&P companies, for example, ExxonMobil, ENI, OGDCL and PPL. We have high hopes from Karachi offshore drilling project, and God willing we will hear good news inshallah. The US aid study has established 95 TCF gas and 15 billion barrels oil technically recoverable in Indus Basin. Study for remaining parts of the country will be conducted in phase 2. Pakistan needs assistance of interested foreign E&P companies in this field to economically exploit these non-conventional hydrocarbon reserves. The international pipelines are an important source of gas for Pakistan, and we have recently signed a MOU with a major Asian company to establish a US $10 billion offshore gas pipeline. Work on Tapi gas pipeline is progressing, and it is a very important project to meet our energy requirements. Our team is working on other pipeline projects, storage facilities, and we will share good news in this regard soon. Ladies and gentlemen, in the end, I would like to commend Jung and Geo Group for holding a successful oil and gas conference. Thank you very much. Pakistan Paindabad.
آپ کو وفاقی وزیر برائے میری ٹائم افیئرز سید علی حیدر زیدی کی تقریر کے کچھ اہم نکات دکھاتے ہیں.
I'm glad that conferences like this are being organized. I can only talk about what I am responsible for. That is the logistics of both LNG and oil and everything else that is imported or exported in this country. And most of you already know the ports, what is happening in KPT, and the challenges, I should say, that we faced with the LNG terminals in Port Qasim. Alhamdulillah, we were able to, we started night navigation, so most of the people who were complaining about, most of the other importers of other commodities and exporters even, who were complaining about congestion at the ports has been addressed. So we are now moving forward.
The biggest advantage for the oil that is imported through an SPM is the deepest area where you can put an iceberg. And that is where you can actually save on the freight.
It does make a lot of sense. We just have to address this issue of ports complaining. But I don't think it's not a big challenge. It'll be addressed. I must say that BICO, I don't represent BICO, but I must say that you guys had a tough call with the oil spill, which was not your fault, but it was blamed on you. I have done the inquiry. I have the report with a lot of proof. Hopefully by the end of this week, you will know. We all know who was responsible, but we'll officially give a version of who's responsible and what we are going to do and how we're going to address it in the future.
Sir, in 2013, PTI, in its first policy statement, presented an integrated energy plan, but so far in the 6 months there has been no talk of an integrated energy plan.
The challenges that you sort of identify once you are in government and looking at the files, compared to the challenges where you see from outside, there's a wide gap in the middle. The plan was based on certain facts, figures, and certain foundation, right? Right?
Yes, sir.
You agree with me there? But what of those facts and figures that were given were wrong? So we need to get back to at least a starting point before we start implementing plans.
There was a plan to go ahead with KPT, Port Qasim connectivity. Could you throw some light on that, please?
The cheapest way one way to do it is to start barges. The other way to do it is to do railway, connected through a railway line. And then I have this dream project, ambitious people say, to build a freight corridor, somewhat like the Hong Kong-Macau bridge, connecting the two ports. So I don't have to hit land, but all I have to do is give exits at various points to connect all the industrial areas to the freight corridor as well. If that happens, it will change the whole layout of Karachi.
اور اب ہم آپ کو محمد مراد ابانوف جو چیئرمین اور سی ای او ہیں ٹاپی پائپ لائن کمپنی لمیٹڈ کے، ان کی تقریر کے کچھ اہم نکات دکھاتے ہیں.
I would like to talk to you through the current status of the TAPI project. The length of the pipeline is approximately 1,840 kilometers, and Turkmenistan section's length is 205, and Afghanistan and Pakistan portions are 1,635 kilometers. The project will start in Galkanesh gas field, and the construction of the 56-inch gas pipeline from the gas field to the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan border is being undertaken by state concern Turkmengas, and Afghanistan and Pakistan portions are being developed by TPCL. Delivery to India will be undertaken at the Pakistan-India border, and TPCL will not own any assets in India. Once fully commissioned, the TAPI project aims to export up to 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually for a 30-year period. As you are aware, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India have some of the world's lowest GDP per capita. The project will provide significant economic boost to the three developing countries. Access to natural gas will stimulate industrialization and investment. Afghanistan and Pakistan will benefit from billions of dollars of transit fees. We anticipate that the project will create in excess of 40,000 jobs in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Moreover, the TAPI project has already created workplaces for more than 2,500 people in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The TAPI pipeline project will significantly increase the percentage of Afghans and Pakistanis with access to electricity. We also anticipate that the increased cooperation between the host nations brought about by the project will significantly increase cross-border commercial activity. Without this pipeline, these three countries are dependent on oil, coal, and LNG. It's worth mentioning at this point that the project will be implemented in two phases. Phase 1 involves a free-flow pipeline without any compressor stations, resulting in a capacity to deliver approximately 11 billion cubic meters per annum. And Phase 2 involves the addition of 6 compressor stations, increasing the capacity to deliver approximately 33 billion cubic meters annually. Thank you.
اب ہم بات کریں گے آذربائیجان، ترکمانستان اور اٹلی کے سفیروں سے، اور اس کے علاوہ ڈپٹی ہیڈ آف مشن UAE بھی ہمارے ساتھ ہوں گے. Your Excellencies, welcome. Talking specifically about the oil and gas sector in Pakistan, where do you see the opportunities for your country, for the investors of your country?
We already offered our suggestion to Pakistan, and we signed in 2017 G2G agreement with Pakistan, which is under process. And Azerbaijan also already, we offered oil and oil products to Pakistan with deferred payment, and as a friendly and brotherly country with any state guarantee. And we are ready to supply with oil and gas. And the next stage in the G2G agreement also mentioned other steps also can be provided, building of storage for LNG, LPG, and other possibilities.
Your Excellency of Lanumov, well, we heard about the TAPI gas pipeline project. That is one big project that's on the table at least. But apart from that, are there any other projects that you are looking forward to, especially in the oil and gas sector?
We have another one project with Pakistan, that is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan power transmission line.
Okay.
MOU was signed in 2015, and we are in process of negotiations. We can also supply liquefied gas and petrol, diesel, as the byproducts of oil and gas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ambassador Pontecorvo, we know that ENI has been working in Pakistan for a very long time. With the new government that is promising ease of doing business, do you see more investment from ENI in Pakistan?
By far, it's not the only presence. It's the most noticeable presence in Pakistan. I take the occasion, but you're all experts in the area, that although Exxon is going on the newspaper, the operator is ENI, the money, most part of the money is ENI, the ship is NAM, and the pipeline is Dalmine. My people are wise enough, ENI is wise enough to shut up until they find something being a high risk, high reward. There is a wish to expand this further. We have an intergovernmental agreement, I myself signed it here, with Pakistan on LNG. When also things get rolling, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more Italian companies in not only in the oil and gas sector, but in the other ones also.
And His Excellency Mr. Abdul Aziz Al Niadi, first of all, I would like to thank your country on everybody's behalf over here for extending a helping hand and giving some cushion to this government. In this area of oil and gas, where do you see opportunities, and how geared up do you think your investors are to come into Pakistan?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Second thing, regarding the payments, this is, we see it as a commitment to our brothers here in Pakistan. Regarding the oil and gas sector in Pakistan, we are already here for more than 15 years. We are investing in Parco as
yes.
Mubadala Petroleum. We have UAE companies that they want to invest even in renewable energy. So the market here and the new government, the initiative that they give recently, like a fee, arrival visa and these things, that's it encourage all the companies, the foreign companies, to come, and the PM on the last visit, he welcomed all the UAE companies to invest in Pakistan, and we are willing to invest, especially in oil and gas sector. I met the CEO of Mubadala Petroleum last month, and he was very encouraged to come to Pakistan and to see the opportunities here. We are going to sign the MOU, the economic MOU. So this it will help to encourage the investment here in Pakistan, especially in oil and gas sector.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I conclude this panel discussion. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. اور اب ہم LNG ٹرمینلز پر تفصیلی بات کریں گے اور میں تمام پینلسٹ کا شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں اور ان کو ویلکم کرتا ہوں. جنٹلمین, ویلکم ٹو دس پینل ڈسکشن. آئی ووڈ لائک ٹو اسٹارٹ ود مسٹر اقبال زید احمد since the senior one over here. So, and the first question is about bureaucracy, Iqbal. So if you can just share your experience with us dealing with the bureaucracy over here, and how have you been able to, achieve what you have achieved so far?
Despite the general belief and despite what everybody says, my experience with bureaucracy has never been unpleasant. You always get there, but they take their sweet time in making you get there.
Okay.
Once you improve the system, everybody down the line will follow the system. Many of the issues for which we blame them are not of their making and not in their control, but we hold them responsible. So I think there are issues with bureaucracy. Certainly, there are major issues with bureaucracy, but that is not the only hurdle in the game.
Okay, Mr. Nadeem Aziz, if I can come to you now, what are the prospects for additional terminals in Pakistan?
As you are aware, Pakistan LNG Terminal Limited is the offtake guarantor for the Pakistan Gasport terminal. This is to establish your regasification capacity in Pakistan and to set a model for the private sector to come forward. Generally, the indication that the government has in the public sector is that we will let the private sector take the role forward, and that is what we are doing to facilitate those. Although, thank you for the kind words that Iqbal Sahib has said, the rest of the private sector participants are probably less patient. So we need to recognize that LNG is fairly new in Pakistan, new for the public sector, new regulations, new processes needs to be in place before these can be opened up. But I think the heart is in the right place. We believe that this sector will grow and become more competitive with the private-public partnership rather than, more of a monopoly within the public sector. So I believe, to sum up and answer your question, is that the growth of this sector will be facilitated by public sector, but will be led by private sector.
Okay, Mr. Fadi Mifri, what prospects, what opportunities do you see for more terminals in Pakistan?
We are ready to invest, but we do need to see a business model. Nobody in his sane mind will invest without seeing a business model. A business model for private sector import, not public sector, government subsidized and paid for import of commodity. A private sector import where an importer, like for example Trafigura, goes through a regas terminal, like for example that of Associated Group in PGPCL, and contracts and sells regasified LNG to a consumer of Pakistan. I let you guess who can pay international price. There are consumers in Pakistan that can pay international prices. Once that model is in place, foreign investors, local investors will line up and invest.
Mr. Ansel, how do you see the situation for more terminals?
You've got a 2 BCFD gap. You've got to fill that gap. There's no other solution.
Right.
I think the biggest problem that we have right now is, again, not the demand. It's the affordability. I'll give you an example right now. At this point in time, every time I open the news channel, we're talking about how the domestic consumer is going to cope with the inflated gas bills. Let's talk about why that is. Taimur spoke about the UFG, about $1.90 in the Karachi area. I think Mr. Nadeem Nazir has done some excellent work over the last few weeks. We've identified that over the last 1 year, the government had to pay approximately $40 million on take-or-pay for not utilizing the capacity. You're paying approximately the same amount of money, which is a loss in revenue by not utilizing the pipeline which is available. So in a nutshell, there's about 14 billion rupees of cost burden that is going to the customers or the end consumers. The question is, how do we manage that? Can we manage that? Of course we can. The private industry can step in and they can bring not only affordable gas, but they can also allow and take some of the burden of the government's shoulder. Coming back to your question on more LNG terminals, as I mentioned, there are 7 or 8 companies willing to invest. The most important element is going to be the cost of the regas terminal. You have to build a terminal that's going to be cheaper.
Iqbal Sahab, how do you think we can optimize the utilization of existing terminals in Pakistan?
See, the first thing that the government needs to do is to recognize how much gas do they need. Now, when you're talking of these large infrastructure projects like power plants, pipelines, and LNG terminals, the timelines can go awry. And these timelines, these projects are not something like this, that in the morning, one day it is not working, or one day the capacity is not utilized and you should get upset. These are lifelong projects. You have to see over the life of the project whether the government really did the right thing or not. And if they did not, they need to rethink their policy. But having said that, there is demand in the private sector. There is, we are in constant negotiation with OGRA and with PLTL and with PLL, seeking their guidance and advice on how best to move this private sector. And there will be 2 advantages. Of course, there is a commercial advantage for us, but there is a bigger advantage. The bigger advantage is that since this is the only terminal in Pakistan which has excess capacity available, it can demonstrate to other investors that the private sector model works. And this bringing in of the utilization of the excess capacity for private sector will enable other investors, world-class investors who are sitting here, to take their FIDs. So there's a double-edged weapon there. But going back to the first thing, I think the government must have done its assessments and its work as to how to utilize their full contracted capacity of 600 million, which I think they will have to in order to feed Punjab's power plants.
Okay, and just a follow-up question. You see more opportunities for LNG terminals?
There is no other choice for Pakistan.
Okay.
And you see, let me elaborate on one thing. It is very quick to come to these things that these terminals are there and they are set up on take or pay. Imagine these investments are what? $200 million in terminal, $250 million in FSRU, $50 million in pipeline. Imagine a $10 billion investment or a $5 billion investment in a pipeline in which you will not have a settled demand for many years to come, and you will be paying capacity payments. The second point that I would like to make is that unlike for LNG, you are not dependent on any particular field. Let's say today we are getting gas from Turkmenistan. Any field has a chance of catastrophic disaster or a failure or a depletion, whatever. There is no such fear in LNG because if one source is not available, there is another, there is a third, there is a fourth, there is a fifth, whereas the pipeline is a point-to-point connection. So for Pakistan's security, for energy security of Pakistan, perhaps LNG is a more suitable option than a pipeline.
Okay. Mr. Chandana, let me come to you. Now we have heard from our experts that, more terminals are needed. So is there any room in Port Qasim? Can you accommodate more terminals?
Port Qasim, already as my colleague Ansar just said, we are 6 to 7 terminal operators, proponents have already applied and are in advanced stage, and they have been given their provisional NOCs to conduct their QRAs, and most of them have conducted their QRAs. So the space is over there. What we are looking at basically is to accommodate all of them, because you have to understand Port Qasim is not a LNG specific port. When the 2 terminals which are already established, which at Iqbal Sahab rightly said, were addressing the power shortages of the country, which was in crisis, they are operating over there. Now to accommodate more terminals on the same coast, in the same place available, there's a question mark. The question mark is disturbance of the other LNG traffic vis-a-vis the other normal traffic. And for that purpose, in 2011, the Port Qasim board specifically asked Port Qasim to conduct a study regarding the LNG zone, whether to explore the option, whether there should be an exclusive LNG zone where 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 10, as much as it can, terminals be accommodated with the specific instructions that they should have a minimal impact on the normal port traffic, navigational channel. Now, coming back to my first part, that due to the exigencies and energy crisis in the country, we did place those 2 terminals which are at place at the moment without conducting that specific LNG zone study. So, but these 2 terminals are operating very well. They have catered for the country very well. They have contributed to the energy deficiencies. But for now on, what we have decided, we have gone back to our drawing board and we said, look, we now got to put our act straight. We have got that breathing space now where we have a comparatively healthy energy mix. So let's explore that option. So Port Qasim is now embarking on that LNG zone study.
Mahal, if you can reply, suggestions for the government for the growth of this sector specifically.
There are 3 things which come to my mind. Instead of holding up progress at Port Qasim, involve the private sector. If there are 7 applicants, PQA should call all of us. They have a problem with opening up the alternative channel. For example, our terminal is located at Mother Point, and this Chandvalio Creek, they think that should be could be an option for LNG vessels to come in and go out without disturbing their normal channel. It would be very easy for 6 of us to sit together with PQA and agree that, look, we take up the cost of, because with government, the tendering process, all this is very, very long. We take up the cost of developing this alternative channel at our cost, our risk collectively. There are enough investors out there. It's not a big deal. It's $150 to $200 million, even less. less than the price of the terminal. Let everybody add $20 million to the cost of their terminal and get it done and over within 1 year. And whoever comes is given permission. No monopoly, no difficulty, but my problem is something else. Port Qasim will be able to deliver. They will be able to allow, and there will be competition. Where is the evacuation capacity? Where is this gas going to go? There is no pipeline available today beyond 1.2 BCF, which Mr. Nadeem controls. The third RLNG pipeline, for which the previous government gave bank guarantees to Sui Southern and Sui Northern, is also a 1.2 BCF pipeline. There are challenges on that pipeline. Nothing has happened, despite the government guarantees and everything. So it is all very good to talk of terminals, but very soon you will find that terminals are there with doing nothing, because there will be no capacity to evacuate this gas to the north of the country or to the central regions of the country. So find innovative ways of building this pipeline, or find alternative ways of transporting LNG. And I would like this forum to make a statement that we should have a body of terminal owners, of users of LNG, the two SUI companies, PLTL in particular, PLL, it's an important player, and OGRA and the Ministry of Petroleum, meeting very regularly.
Very brief comments, Mr. Fadi Mithri, suggestions, and then I'll come to Mr. Nadeem in the end.
One suggestion and two brief comments. So on the suggestion, I join Mr. Iqbal on the suggestion that we have a one-point contact with the government. Now, two observations. Mr. Iqbal rightly pointed to the strategic nature of LNG. This also calls into question what is the spare capacity in control of PLTL for before it is put back on the private sector. I'm talking of the contracted capacity of PLTL, whether that capacity is strategic or not, whether that capacity is useful in peak summer, whether that capacity, that spare capacity, is something that the state of Pakistan needs. My second observation, Pakistan needs storage. LNG, the two LNG tanks are small. I'm talking of the regas terminals. Someone in Pakistan needs to take that gas, store it, and release it at the time where the market needs it most. At current, only the government-owned entities can do. This is a topic that is absolutely vital, absolutely vital. Second topic is creative and innovative ways of transporting LNG. It's very important that the appropriate regulations come in place, and then the private sector, once the rules are set, the private sector will step in.
The government is focusing towards private sector. My short-term, I would say, target is that we manage this third-party access that we are working for. We need to, at the public sector, make sure that our coordination between various stakeholders and the way that we support private sector, that definitely needs to be improved. And this has been highlighted internally, and we are working on that. And lastly, again, our regulatory mechanism so that they can work on. And I think we need to take private sector, we need to engage private sector, facilitate them. Innovative solutions that they are talking about, you know, they are probably better placed to introduce to the country.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your valuable suggestions. Please take your seats. अब हम ऑयल मार्केटिंग, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन और रिफाइनरी के शोबे पर बात करेंगे, और मैं तमाम जो पैनलिस्ट हैं उनका शुक्रिया अदा करता हूं, उनको वेलकम करता हूं. Gentlemen, welcome to this panel discussion. Where do you think we stand currently when it comes to deregulation of the sector?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You know, with respect to deregulation, the best phrase which can fill that is, in Pakistan, the state of the affairs is which is called as Adha Titar, Adha Bater, which is, you know, I can't really translate that into English.
Okay.
I hope my colleagues can, you know, help others to understand. The thing is this, that over here, I'm talking about the downstream industry, which includes the oil refining and the marketing. There are three major products we all know. That's furnace oil, motor gasoline, and diesel. And when we say deregulation, regulation, we largely mean by that is the commercial and the other aspect of the regulation of the products particularly, which are the consumer's interest. So, in true sense, only furnace oil can be called as that has been deregulated, but unfortunately that is dying and very soon it will be fade out. The two other products are not at all regulated, deregulated. These are pegged in some way or the other with something else which is which cannot be treated or could be called as completely deregulated. So the first and foremost thing that the country has to think is by deregulating these two products, they are going to actually abolish all of the sources of the corruption and the misgivings, and also things which are creating in this country mismanagement. So my proposal in this respect would be to deregulate the pricing of these products, particularly at the refinery level and at the level of the OMCs. The OMCs can fix their own prices, the refineries can fix their own prices. The government really not need to intervene in fixing the dealer's margin and the distribution margin. The second thing which I would suggest is to abolish IFEM, Inland Freight Equalization Margin. That actually, by abolishment of that, there will be a lot of improvement in the, not only in the business sector, but also in the supply chain. So by doing that, actually you will go into the, stepwise going into the deregulation.
Mr. Jahangir Shah, how do you agree or disagree with what Mr. Waseed Khan has said about deregulation? What would be your proposal for that?
In principle, I agree with Waseed Khan Saab, but it is internationally the way he was explaining the market, and there will be a competition and there won't be any misuse of inland freight equalization margin. But as you know that if the prices slightly go high, the Brent go high, the price go high, the people of the country, they don't like it. They said they deregulated, but they did a partial deregulation of the products. Number one, the furnace oil is 100% deregulated, jet fuel is 100% deregulated, high octane, we say high octane, that is around 92 PSO, that's a deregulated, only diesel and motor gas. So the diesel, they have deregulated partially from the depot, from terminal to the depots, from Karachi to the depots. That is controlled by the OGRA IFEM, but the secondary freight from the depot to the retail outlet, that is, deregulated. But in the country, the government is also want to have a stabilized price equal from at the Karachi as well as at the Peshawar. So if they deregulate it, there will be a lot of competition and the prices will go down in a competition, but it's the matter of the government. They have to decide whether they are going to do that or not. In principle, I agree with that.
Right. Mr. Mumtaz Khan, how would you respond to this deregulation thing? It's up to the government to decide.
You see, you must realize that if the free market is the best mechanism all over the world, the moment you try to have regulatory systems in place, it results in corruption, it results in mismanagement and general inefficiencies in the sector. As you know, before the white oil pipeline was built, the highest selling petrol pump in Pakistan was a remote place in NWFP, because they was all charging freight from Karachi to that place, and the oil was being dumped somewhere along the way. So who was losing the money? The government was losing the money because government was paying the IFEM. So, in my view, it would be in the interest of the consumers, it was in the interest of the industry and interest of the government that the prices are fully deregulated, because then you don't have problems with people charging different prices. Pakistan is the only country, I think, as far as I know, where you have uniform prices all over the country. Oil has to be carried from Karachi to Peshawar, and that carrying cost has to be built into the price. So I think it is very logical and it is economical in the interest of all concerned that the market should be deregulated.
Okay, so when we are talking about this deregulation, have you spoken to this new government on this topic, and what is their response?
Yes, I think we have had many sessions. You know, last year, government did massive devaluation, both the government, previous one and the new one. And all the OMCs have suffered billions of rupees in currency losses. Because we buy oil on credit. We buy oil today and the bill for it is to be paid next month. And if in that, during this period, a 10% devaluation takes place, we can't build that into our price, and nor does the OGRA build that into that price. I think if you will see the balance sheet of all the oil companies' reports, I'm sure PSO, Shell, everybody has taken a massive currency loss, hit in their balance sheets, Okay. And this is not good for the industry, because if we don't make money, then we don't invest in future infrastructure, you see.
Right. Dr. Fazil, I would like your comment on this.
What has been seen over here in Pakistan is that deregulation, everybody agrees that deregulation is the right way to go. But who will bail the cat has always been the question mark in people's, and one of the reasons is you can't have deregulation, but at the same time retain the inland freight equalization margin. वो जो आधा तीतर आधा बटेर वाली बात हो रही थी ना, it has to be total deregulation. And believe me, I think the industry feels that it will benefit the customer. After all, the consumer is the real beneficiary of deregulation. And that is something that has been discussed with the previous governments, and that needs to be raised again with the present government. The new petroleum policy for the downstream sector, I believe, is in formulation. And there's been a lot of discussion where deregulation has also been proposed to be part of that policy. Unless you have a policy change, we'll all keep talking about it as we have been doing for the past 10 years.
So how do you advise the government, if they want to deregulate, can they do it so easily in Pakistan?
I think the consumers would need to be educated across the country that the oil and gas prices are international market-based prices, and there's not much that any government can do. What the government can do is bringing in efficiencies in the whole supply chain.
Let's move on to upgradation. Javed sir, I would like to start with you. Looking at the infrastructure right now, whether it's storage or others, where do you think the biggest need is?
Well, I will start with the storage. PSO has a storage of 1 million metric ton in the country at this time of moment. And we are enhancing our storage other than 1 million that we have turned to 220 million metric ton for the future. We are enhancing our storages, as well as PSO also working on the connectivity of two ports, as the minister in the morning said. The Port Qasim and the KPT, God forbid that one port is stuck up, then you don't have anything to move the things. So that's on the feed stage. Defense is, it's the policy that any storage you develop, you have to have a permission from the defense. So we got a permission from the defense ministry as well as, and we have got a permission from DHA in principle. We are working on that. So it's on the initial stages. And we are doubling storages, as well as regarding the refineries, we are a downstream OMC, but we have financed our share in the PRL, PSO.
Yes.
Purchase the Shell shares, and we are just working to upgrade that refinery up to the deep conversion instead of hydroskimming refineries.
Okay. Mr. Mumtaz Khan, if you can share your views on infrastructure and especially storage.
I think first point I want to make is that strategic storage is the job of the government of Pakistan. In any country it is. The oil marketing companies build storage for their own requirements and not to meet the strategic needs of the country. Unfortunately, in this country, because the government has not made enough investment in strategic storage, for whatever reason, I don't know, the pressure has been mounting on the oil marketing companies to build up storages, And of course, we have met our statutory requirement. Today, after PSO, we have the largest storage infrastructure in Pakistan. Recently, jointly with VTOL, we have built a 200,000-ton storage facility at Port Qasim under our company separate company has called Terminals Limited. And we are still building storages all over, But in my view, the government should not neglect its own responsibility that they have to build strategic, because God forbid, if there is any war-like situation or an emergency situation in the Middle East, there's a blockade or something, and we rely on imported oil a lot, so the country will be really in a fix. It is very important that we should have at least 20 days storage, strategic storage cover to meet the requirements, strategic requirements both of the defense forces and of the consumers. We will meet the demand of the consumers through our strategic storage. But the armed forces requirement and emergency requirements have to be met by the government. The second point, if I may like to just add, because so many oil professionals are here, that Pakistan as a country needs to develop indigenous resources of gas and oil. We cannot continue to rely on imported oil. If our economy is to grow by 4%, by 5% per annum, our energy demand will be growing by 7.5% per annum. And if you factor that in on today's, you will see that in 10 years' time, where our energy demand will be. And will we be able to afford energy at that time? Considering our exports are not growing by that same, the government has to look at energy from an integrated point of view.
Right. Mr. Jahangir, did you want to add something over here?
Yes, I would like to add here that for the strategic reserves, the government, for the defense strategic reserves, government is negotiating with PSO, and if it's the final stage, we are just at the point where we have to sign the agreements to develop the storage for the defense.
Okay, good news. Mr. Wasi Khan, how would you comment on the infrastructure and upgradation of refineries, especially?
With respect to oil refineries, only one oil refinery in Pakistan is mildly upgraded. All other rest four are not at all upgraded. These are called the hydroskimming refineries. In the hydroskimming refineries, you generally produce furnace oil, which is 30 to 40%, in the range of 30 to 40%. And everybody knows that the price of furnace oil is even less than the price of the crude oil. So with that, you are already on a very low margin, that is called a gross refiner's margin, GRM is already very low.
Yes.
So with this furnace oil demand going away, the refineries will have, in the shortest term, is only alternative remaining will be to export that. When exporting that will be bringing, already very low priced material will fetch even lower price. And with that also soon, with the IMO 2020 being implemented, the demand of furnace oil will be globally, going away. So this means that it is a matter of not only, upgrading that for the sake of upgrading, this is a matter of continuity of the business as a going concern for the refineries that are operating in Pakistan. So the need is to go for the upgradation. By upgradation, you mean that you have to go into the cracking mode of the refineries. Adding more plants, having more facilities in the plant, and convert your furnace oil into motor gasoline and diesel, which has a demand in the country and which can bring in more feasibility, more viability to your business. But the problem is this, that these plants or these facilities, these come by very expensive plants, very cost extensive. $100, $200 million is nothing. There is an estimate, approximately these refineries would require $2 to $2.5 billion to upgrade, or if these are all upgraded. So if these refineries are to invest that much, these refineries will definitely seek for as to what are they going to get in return to that. But there are two things which the refineries would always like to see the government to at least offer. One is the consistency of the policies. The government must follow this, strictly adhere to the policies. If they have given something to the refineries on which they have worked out their feasibilities, and on the basis of that, if they have invested, then these must continue for a foreseeable, for a period upon which they have worked on their economics. The second thing is at least the protection in the shape of the disposal of the product locally. The refineries must be guaranteed, and this must be guaranteed by the government, at least where this regulation is needed in the country, where the product of the production that is made by the refineries must be absorbed in the country first, and only net deficit should be allowed to be imported.
If you could just summarize and just give me 2 points that the government should really do this for this sector.
The new petroleum policy which they are formulating nowadays, seen that, but unfortunately, honestly, I did not find something really revolutionizing. It requires to have things whereby what I just said, that need to go for more deregulation, abolish IFEM. Such things I did not find in the new petroleum policy. Okay. And I think the new petroleum policy must include this thing, whereby you are getting rid of IFEM at least, because that is alone going to revolutionize your supply chain.
Mr. Mumtaz Khan, 2 or 3 key suggestions for the government?
I think my 2 or 3 key suggestions for the government, one would be, as everybody has agreed, that there should be total deregulation of the industry. Number 2, government should concentrate on building indigenous resources of energy. Spend more money and make our exploration policy more attractive to encourage the best people in the world to come and explore for Pakistan, oil and gas reserves in Pakistan. And number 3 is that they should try to limit, at the moment, the threshold they had previously was that anybody who has 10 million rupees, can set up an oil marketing company. Now, you can't even set up one storage facility for 10 million rupees, for God's sake.
Okay, Mr. Jahangir Ali Shah, if you can just give 2 or 3 key suggestions and we'll wrap it up.
I recommend that it should be deregulated, but for that, we have to educate the consumers, that by deregulating this fuel products, this diesel and motor gas, they will get the benefit from their, in a competition. They will get the lower prices rather than jack up the prices that are regulated by the government. So we have to educate them, and then they might deregulate this.
Thank you very much for your suggestions. Please take your seats.